Okay, my name's Anne, and this is Book Carnival, and I'm delighted today to have two of my favorite authors with me. We have Alyssa Maxwell with her new book, Murder at Wakehurst, and I'm showing that reasonably well. And then we have Dianne Freeman back with us with I have to look at this, A Fiancée's Guide to First Wives and Murder. All right.
I don't do short titles.
No, it's a challenge every time I go typing it that I get it right. Both of you have been doing so well with your books, and I'm hoping that you're feeling good about it. Been well received. Hopefully. Yes? No?
Seems to be.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I don't really have any data, but I hope it is. This has been, this was like one of my most fun books to write. So I hope it is enjoyed by the people who are reading it.
Well, and you give yourself a lot of flexibility with the title, because the two words that go in over past and, before and after, can be anything.
Mm-hmm.
And yet it's very identifiable that it's that series.
Yeah, I started out, I think the first three were A Lady's Guide to, and whatever was going on. And then it just got to be, okay, Kensington started saying, people are getting confused. You need to come up with a new name, but you need to make it really similar to the old name, or the old title. So that was a challenge, but we thought, okay, if we just change the noun, then we can carry on as usual. So it's good because it's always involving Frances, the main character, and she evolves and goes through very different stages of her life. So in this book, she's a fiancée.
No, I'm glad they didn't insist on much of a change, because I do think it gets confusing for the reader to be able to pick up on it.
Sure.
And Alyssa, I love your cover, and the book, of course, but the purples and the background colors are just very, very attractive. How do you feel about this book and as part of your writing?
Both the plot line and the sleuth have been evolving. As Dianne said, they evolve and they grow and their lives change and circumstances change. So this book was really a natural progression in my sleuth's life. There's a life-changing event that begins right on page 1, and it changes life for the Vanderbilt family, for Emma, for the series itself. The patriarch, the Vanderbilt patriarch Cornelius, has died. Which is a somber note to begin with, but the book was also a lot of fun because Wakehurst was modeled after a 16th century Elizabethan manor house. The owner, James Van Allen, is such an over-the-top Anglophile that he wanted everything in his life to be Elizabethan, right down to some of the slang he used when he was talking to people. So the book has its serious side and it has its fun side. I got to explore a little bit about actors and the Newport Opera House. And Emma has really come a long way from the society journalist that she was in the beginning of the series. She's actually a real journalist now. She reports on hard news, and she's always also on the case whenever a murder happens in one of these beautiful Gilded Age Newport mansions.
The research on something like that must be really fun.
It is fun, and it's so accessible too, because Newport has so many preservation societies, historical societies, and they're so eager to share their information. And there's really no shortage of research material on the Gilded Age itself. So, all I have to do is open books, turn on my computer, and it's all there, and I can go down very deep rabbit holes with it.
Have you done any of the tours, either in the past or since you've been writing the series?
All the tours. I have not been inside Wakehurst. but I
Oh,
have been inside or crossways either, because those are private condos now, so you can't get in. But I have found floor plans for all the houses. Every other house I have been in so far, even one that's owned by Salve Regina University, they don't give tours of Ochre Court, but we went in. I started talking. The woman at the desk was turning us away. No, I'm sorry, you can't come in until I mentioned my brother-in-law's name,
oh,
because my husband is from Newport and his family, has been there for generations. So, they have very deep roots. And this woman was very good friends with my brother and sister-in-law. And at that point, she closed up her desk and said, "Come with me." And we saw the whole house from top to bottom. So, not only have I taken the tours, but I've had a lot of little magic things like that happen through the years that have been so wonderful.
oh, that is. And to be able to
Yeah.
drop a name, come on, that is special.
I think it's wonderful that the homes are still there because, like, their
It
New
is
York homes
all
are all
gone.
gone,
Right.
and they didn't even last 10, 20 years. And they
They
were,
maybe, yeah, 20, 30 years at the
yeah,
most. And a lot of the Newport homes are gone. But luckily really in the 50s, it started. People like Catherine Warren stepped in. She was the head of the Preservation Society. She really founded it. And, people started stepping in to save what was left. And they did save an awful lot of them. And now the ones that are not owned as museums are being sold again to the new mega billionaire that has popped up in this
right.
country, and they're buying them, and in some cases living in them privately, and in other cases opening them again as museums. We are lucky.
Yes, very much so. We don't do as well at that here in California. We have pockets of areas that have been preserved, and of course we didn't have, except for San Francisco, didn't have the mansions to speak of. Uh, yeah,
Shangri-La still there, the one owned by Doris Duke. She also owned Rough Point in Newport.
not sure about that. I couldn't answer that, and maybe someone
Okay.
else can when we're chatting. Um, Dianne, what got you started with your title and to do a story like this?
Probably, I had a character. I actually have someone, an old neighbor in my life who was very much the model for the character of Irina in here. And I've just been kind of waiting for an opportunity to put her in a book because she's quite a character. And I spend a lot of time going through the newspaper archives for the time period that I'm writing. And as I got into November, which was about where this book was going to be placed, I saw that Grand Duke Michael Mikhailovich really did pay a visit to the Prince of Wales at that time. And he brought Sophie de Torby, his wife. And I thought, okay, this could work out really, really well because a lot of the, I don't want to say craziness, but a lot of the exuberance of the Irina character comes across as she's crazy because of these claims that she's making. So I thought, okay, perfect. She's going to claim to be related to the prince. She's going to claim to be related to the Grand Duke. She's going to be claimed to this, be an actress, one thing or another. I thought, oh, this is perfect. So because I already knew that character so well, I think that's what made this book both easy and a lot of fun to write. So what could be the biggest trouble for Frances is if this character also said, I'm Mrs. George Hazelton, who is the man Frances is engaged to. So I thought that's what kind of everything took off from that point.
That would stir things up.
It would for Frances, that's for sure. At first, she thinks the woman's a little nuts, but then when she ends up the victim, then Frances and George are the prime suspects in this case.
Of course. What part, and this is for both of you, but we'll start with you, Alyssa. What parts of the book or what sections do you find the most difficult to write, and what are the easiest?
Do you mean this particular plot?
This particular
I mean, in
series,
general.
um,
Say that again.
well, somewhat in general, but going with these characters in this series, what do you find? Are there certain sections you really enjoy writing, or others that are a little more difficult to get
Oh
into?
gosh, I don't know. I enjoy getting into Emma's head so much, as well as getting back to Newport, especially these past 2 years when I haven't been able to go myself. Um, I can't really say that there's anything that I find hard or that I would rather not have to write. I really I enjoy even writing the murder. Although I don't go into details about it, obviously
Right.
it's more of a cozy. I enjoy putting that together. I enjoy putting the pieces together and then dropping the clues. I enjoyed the personal aspects of Emma's life and her relationships. I love the family aspects, whether it's the family that owns the house, especially her Vanderbilt cousins, with the grown children, and then the parents, or if it's Emma's own little kind of makeshift family. I love family dynamics. I love writing the descriptions because again, that puts my head right back into Newport where I would love to be.
Uh-huh.
No, I have to say that I really, really enjoy writing these books, and I don't find anything overly difficult. I mean, writing is difficult in general.
Right. But
It's not like, oh, the words fly off, from my brain to my fingertips. And I do struggle over passages, but there's nothing in particular that I can say I dread having to write that scene.
I think that's wonderful. And I can tell from the way you're responding that you're there when you're writing it. You've transported yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting.
A question has come up in research. Do you have to go to the place that you're writing about? And I don't believe you do. I think you can find out so much by doing research. It's just that when you have been there, you know what it feels like.
Mhm.
You know what the wind feels like in the sun, and the water, what the water feels like when it sprays up on the rocks. I mean, that is somewhat of a difference. And yes, I feel that when I'm writing.
That's great. How about you, Diane?
Yeah, I'm kind of with Alyssa on this in that even the things that are difficult, it doesn't mean I don't really enjoy doing them.
All right.
Um, Hammering out that opening paragraph for me is always something I really labor over, but I love it. I mean, I'll write the opening in the first draft and know it's going to change and then continue on. And then the very end also kind of can be difficult for me. But even where it's difficult, I still really enjoy it. Um, I love writing the characters. I enjoy getting in the character's head. I love plotting and yeah, planting the clues. I'll plot things out way before I ever start writing, drafting. And I have a whole lot of fun with that. I know people who just say outlining, ugh, but it isn't really. You're kind of plotting a crime, and it's I just have a great lot of fun with that. This is the first time I've included real people as characters, and I had a lot of heartburn over that. Oh gosh, am I getting them right? But I still really enjoyed it. And I was going to ask Alyssa, because you use a lot of real characters
I,
as your
I do.
characters.
Yeah.
How does that work for you? And do you ever worry that you might be getting them wrong?
I don't. I feel that if I can find out a lot of information about certain people, they're not as strong a character in the story. So they might be more, peripheral characters. But where I can find out, like in James Van Allen's case, the Elizabethan fascination that he had really made his character, and I was able to find out enough to know that yeah, he was a little nutty, in a harmless way. So I used that. Um, I used the Vanderbilts, of course, quite a bit, and I just looked at the history of what happened to their family during those years. And this is fiction. Yes, we put words in their mouths.
Mhm.
Um, we give them emotions that we don't know really if they had or not, but looking at what happened to them and the conflicts and the internal family strife that they went to, I think, we can assume certain things and go with it. And
Mhm.
so, no, I don't worry. Plus the fact that you really can't be sued on behalf of deceased people. So that's good too.
There's something to be said for that. Absolutely.
Yes. Yeah. I worried more about using the real houses and using the real names than I did about using the historical figures because the houses are still here.
That's true.
Um,
And did
but
you check with anyone, or did you just go forward and wait to see what happened?
my agent checked with his legal consultant, and we were told that as long as they're being used in their historical context, there's really no problem with it. But what has turned out is that people like the Historical Society have really embraced the series and are very supportive of it. So that's been great. That's been wonderful.
That would be that would be tremendous support in many ways, really.
Yes. Yes.
So tell me, you both enjoy very much what you're doing, and you don't find, well, you may have times when you work a little harder at a particular section, but what got you started in the first place of doing something historical as opposed to contemporary?
Hmm. Historical fiction in general is my go-to read. So that's probably the overwhelming impetus to write historical. It's what I read. It's what I love.
Okay.
It's usually, if I'm reading nonfiction, it's historical. And the other part of it is I honestly, this is where I get nervous again. If I actually had to do some of the forensic and policing things and putting that in my manuscripts the way they do today and the way they keep changing and updating, I think that would have me really frantic. I don't know if I could do the policing part of the mystery if it were contemporary. I would be a little nervous about that.
Okay.
Yeah, Diane, I think you and I could share a library
Yeah.
because I love historical fiction. I have for a long time. I've been reading it for 30, 40 years. And even as a kid, I loved historical stories. Um, I feel more comfortable writing with historical characters than I think I would with modern people. I just have the sense that if I tried to write a modern character, they would feel stiff for some reason. I
Mhm.
don't know. I love to read history. I love biographies of historical figures. And I love the challenge actually of having to solve a crime without use of forensics
Yeah.
and modern techniques. I mean, the character really has to rely on her wits and, following those clues and getting information out of people. So she has to use her mind, and nothing is ever easy. But having said that, at the same time, like you were saying, police procedures and things like that, we don't have to worry about so much because,
Mhm.
it was kind of however the local police department was handling things was just fine and dandy. There
True.
were no real, universal police standards at that time.
Mhm. Even fingerprints, because you're in 1899 too. I think there's like
Right.
two
Not
more
quite yet.
years
No.
before the first
Right.
case in which they were ever
Right.
used, at least in England.
Right. They can
So,
use them. Right. In my other series, they have used
mhm,
fingerprint
yeah.
techniques. Yeah.
So they really, really have to rely on talking to people, questioning them, really looking for clues that stand out. People really probably could get away with a lot of crimes back in the day that they couldn't get away with now. But I
Right.
think they also had different motives, at least in the circles that both Alyssa and I write in, the upper echelons of society. There's not being able to marry the one you love, and or not being acceptable to the family, things of that nature. Motives that for murder that just probably wouldn't happen today. were certainly there. They were more, I think, emotional at the time.
But well, in the inheriting of,
Yeah.
who inherits what and when and why.
Money is always a big one.
Well, yeah, that probably would hold true today too.
Mhm.
Yes. But you had the formality of it, wasn't it? The firstborn son and then the second one. Does that take place? Something that you have to think about, because the first one is going to typically inherit the mansion or whatever it might be.
That was a British thing. And
Right.
it was, the whole idea was to keep the wealth in the family rather than letting it go to, winnowed out to all the kids, which they kind of did in the US.
Right. They
Everybody,
did. Yes.
got a cut.
Right. My family's divided it among the children.
Yeah.
There might be like one primary heir who got the most, but the other brothers and even the daughters would all get, very nice settlements in their
But
inheritance. So they did break it up.
the
It's
problem with,
funny too. Oh, I'm sorry. Go
oh,
ahead.
no, well, the problem with primogeniture, with the firstborn son getting everything, is that he also inherited all the responsibility.
Right.
So if there was a maiden aunt who needed a home, he had to house her. If he had younger sisters who needed dowries, he had to provide for them. So you kind of wanted to make sure if you're related to that oldest son and you're relying on him to take care of you, you want to make sure he inherits as much as possible so that he does have the wherewithal to take care of you. And in the era that I'm writing in, the late Victorian, that's kind of going away because they were really based in agriculture and prices were dropping. People who normally worked their land were now going to work in factories. So that era was kind of starting to die out, and as it does more up until World War One, where's it's gone.
And were you going to add to that, Alyssa?
Oh, yeah, yeah. I was going to point out that William Henry Vanderbilt, who was the first Cornelius's son, purposely split up his fortune evenly among his sons, Cornelius, William, George, Frederick. I could be forgetting somebody, because he didn't wish to give any one of them the burden of so much wealth. I mean, he felt that it was such a burden that he thought to do that, to give it all to one would have been too much, too much to put on their shoulders. So a very different outlook from in England, like you're
Right.
saying.
And more, I would think, allow the family to stay happy and related, thinking kindly of each other when it's
Yeah.
spread
Well,
out like that.
in America, the idea was, here's your, piece of the fortune. Now you go and make something with it. Whereas I think in England, it was you inherited and you were a gentleman. You didn't work. You didn't, really expand
Yeah,
your fortune. So it
that's
was a
exactly
completely
true.
different outlook.
Mm.
Yeah.
Did you find in research that they did not expand their fortune? Did they gamble it away, or
Oh,
did
sure.
they just let it waste away?
Oh, sure. Plenty of them did do that. Cornelius the second, who is actually the person who passes away in murder at Wakehurst, had how many sons? There were several sons. The youngest one, Reggie, did nothing with his money and spent it and was basically, destitute by the 1920s when his daughter, Gloria Vanderbilt, was born. Um, she did inherit some money, but I'm not sure, exactly where that money came from, because Reggie really he was a drunkard and he went through his inheritance.
Oh,
And George Vanderbilt in, the previous generation, who built the Biltmore, basically spent the bulk of his fortune building that house. And, he did wonderful things in the town. He really made Asheville what it was, and he educated the local people and did all kinds of things to help them. But he spent his money doing it and really didn't make any money to replace it.
oh, that's sad when you've done something so generous for the people.
Right, Right. His wife had to sell off huge tracts of land after he died.
Uh, huh. All of this is so interesting and so different from the way we live today that it's when you're in your writing and you're in that place, is it hard to resurface?
It can be, yeah. I've gone to the drugstore and, I'm paying for something and I start chatting and I'm using this kind of upper class word. It's just like, what is wrong with me? So yeah, it can be a little hard to come out of it. Sometimes you don't want to because it's a awfully nice place to be.
Right.
Yeah,
It would
it
seem
is.
so. And
For
so what,
me, at the end, oh, excuse me.
no, please go ahead.
Yeah, no, for me, at the end of the day, I find my brain is a little bit mushy. So it's actually hard, not so much to come out of the time period, but just to come out of that process of writing, of being so focused on it. And then my poor husband comes home and wants to tell me about his day and talk to me, and I'm done. I have no words left. Poor guy.
I can believe that because you envelop it in such a degree,
Right.
both of you, that it would be like surfacing out of the water and trying to
Mhm.
make sense of something.
Right.
Um, uh, and does your husband understand?
Oh yes, he does. He's very, very supportive of this. Oh yeah.
I would go with sometimes. It's if we're doing something like a remodel, I am expected to pay attention to that, and sometimes I can't quite get my head into it. So
Yeah, I could see that happening easily. And uh, I think someone who doesn't do that kind of thing, like I gather your husbands are not writers, so it's a whole different world for them, and it must be not an adjustment because you've obviously been married for a while and all that, and they're used to it. But in the beginning, perhaps an adjustment to realize you're really not in the same century they are at the moment they
No,
want to talk about something.
actually quite the opposite. Uh, my husband's office is just an immersion in Newport history because of his family. So he's
Okay.
got photos and all kinds of papers and family trees and documents from his grandfather and his father. So really he completely gets it when it comes
Oh,
to this. And he's sometimes more back there than I am.
that's
wow.
amazing. And I think
Yeah,
that's got to be fun.
it is fun. Yeah.
Uh, um, what else would you like to tell people about your books, either one of you?
Hmm. Well, we have a bit of a tie-in that my protagonist, Frances, kind of grew up in the background with the people where from not necessarily Newport, it was New York society, but
Right.
Frances was New Money. And she did the transatlantic wedding with a whole lot of other American heiresses. So she was one who fled. She couldn't quite make it in the upper class in New York. So she fled to England. But it's fun for me to read Alyssa's because of having gotten really involved with the American heiresses. I know quite a bit about the people that she writes about, like Grace Wilson in this book. I'm about midway through Wakehurst. And I just can't remember what the objection was to her, but I do
Yeah.
remember that Neely just totally cast away from the family because of marrying her. And I don't even know if it was objection to her or just because he made the decision on his own or what it was. But yeah, it's fun that I can read her books and see a tie-in to some of my stories as well.
Yeah. And same here with when I read yours. I keep wondering, is Consuelo Vanderbilt going to show up maybe in one of your books sometime? Because she was there by then.
Mhm.
She went in 1895. She married the Duke of Marlborough, and so yeah, she was one of those transatlantic heiress brides. As far as Grace Wilson goes, well, they were very new money, and her father was a bit of a privateer during the Civil War. They were a Southern family, and he was, I guess, kind of blockade running. And I've read that Rhett Butler may have been modeled after him. I don't know how true that is, but he was sort of a little bit of that type of character during the war. So to some, to New York society, this was just, too flamboyant, too vulgar. And then they considered them all gold diggers. Grace's brother and sister, one married into the Golay family, the other one married into the Astor family. Um, and in fact, James Van Allen in this Murder at Wakehurst was married to Emily Astor. So there was a lot of intermarriage among these people. It was really kind of incestuous when you consider that they call them the 400. So it was a very small society, really. Um,
Right. That they
Yeah.
restricted
yeah,
themselves to.
and many of them were related somehow, at least by marriage.
Which is very much like the aristocracy in London, too. It was a very closed society. You married each other.
Right. And when you look at the Russian royal family, they were also had a lot of English royal blood,
Mhm.
from Queen Victoria. So
They
yes,
were a
very
lot of fun
interrelated.
to write, the Romanovs, because they're just so flamboyant and loud and just very highly strung, maybe is the word I'm looking for. I don't want to say emotional, but very highly strung. It was just, I really enjoyed including the Romanovs in this book.
I enjoyed that too. And I think our fascination with the Russian royal family has never gone away. They had that the mystery and the tragedy and
Yeah.
and because it was Russia, they weren't quite as, I don't know, accessible to us as say the English royal family. So it's
Mhm.
fascinating.
And still not, yeah.
Right.
Nor did they even want to be, really.
Mhm. No.
Okay.
Yeah, they were not benevolent royals. They were a lot of what they did. They did not want to be well known.
Now you mentioned the new money and the ones that had the so-called new money not being accepted as well. When they went over to England, though, they made quite a sensation, didn't they?
They did. They were. England was going through an agricultural depression at that time, or recession at least, and agriculture was how they made their money. So these girls came over and they were more well educated. They were high spirited, they were beautiful, and they had a lot of money. And their parents were really happy to hand it over in exchange for a title. So they went over with a bang. They were very well received.
Which makes for a lot of fun.
It does. And they did. And some of them, a lot of them, like Consuelo Vanderbilt, did not fare well. It was not a happy marriage for her. But that didn't always stop them from having a happy life. Marriage was just kind of part of the business. And then they went on and made their own lives and they did well. They were not able to say run companies, but they certainly ran charities, benevolent societies. They ran their husbands' political careers in many cases, like Jenny Jerome, and they still led very full lives, which had they stayed in New York, they would have been lucky to say marry their father's partner, a
Right.
junior partner, something like that. So it was a big risk that they took, but it was in many cases one they were happy to take and they were happy with the outcome.
Mhm. Fascinating.
It is.
And we have a little interference. What is next for both of you?
So
Alyssa,
you want to go?
Yeah, my next book that's coming out is I'm sorry, A Deadly Endowment. It's like, which book? Which is a lady and lady's maid mystery. I think it's number 7 by now.
well,
Um, it takes place in the country estate that they live in, and it kind of is a little like the game Clue. as in somebody did it in the library with the rope, kind of mystery. So it's a lot of fun. And right now I'm working on the next Newport book, which is Murder at Beacon Rock.
Oh, how
Oh, I'm sorry.
exciting.
I finished that. I'm working on, wait, what am I working on now? Oh my gosh. Do you
Isn't
do
it hard to
that,
remember?
Diane? It's like you just become so confused by your titles. I just finished the next Newport book, and I am now working on another ladies' maid book, and this one is called A Fashionable Fatality.
And do you find that your titles are changed when you get closer to the end or when it's ready to be published, or do they always listen to you?
Well, my Newport books are so straightforward that they stay the same. It's Murder at whatever house we're using. The Ladies' Maid books were originally given titles by my editor, but the last two, I came up with a Deadly Endowment. I was so proud of myself, and he liked it. And A Fashionable Fatality really suits what we're doing because a famous fashion designer from Paris has come to visit the ladies, and things will happen. Um, and he liked that also.
Wonderful.
Yeah,
After enough books, they start to listen to you,
I
right?
guess.
One can hope.
Yes, one can hope. Titles and covers, I know, are rarely, the author gets to vote too strongly on those. What about you? And
My next book, I don't know how Alyssa writes two series. I would be very confused. But my next book is in this series, and it will be a bride's guide to marriage and murder. So Frances and George really do get married, but they can't have a normal wedding, and it's never a good sign when the police show up at your wedding. So it was meant to be a quiet affair, just close friends and family, and two feuding neighbors, and a dead body, and the police. And Frances' brother is accused of the murder, so they kind of have to skip the honeymoon and stay home and solve the crime.
well, good he has a sister that knows how, right?
Good thing for him, yes.
Yeah. And when is your book coming out? Is it,
That'll be June of 2022. Wow.
I know it's
June
hard
next
to
year.
say, isn't it?
I know. It's like, wait a minute, what happened to 2021?
And I know yours is right on the cusp of 22. Your first book, right? That's coming out.
Alyssa.
Alyssa?
Oh, my
Yeah.
my next one, A Deadly Endowment, comes out on December 28th.
Right. And then the following one, roughly a year.
Murder at Beacon Rock will be out at the end of August of
Okay.
22.
So we have books to look forward to. That's wonderful. How about questions? I don't see any typed in here. Do people want to unmute themselves and ask any questions? You've all been so quiet.
Yeah.
I see a hand at Marilyn's, but I don't know what to do with it.
Oh,
Marilyn, unmute yourself if you want to ask a question.
Well, I don't know what my hand would be, but how about, is there anything such as American royalty, such as, families that have been, in the theater or have been in the movies or, various corporations? I mean, would that ever be interesting territory to explore?
For their time period or for later on?
Yeah, or just different than maybe the prior to the 1920s and into that Gilded Age. I mean, that Gilded Age view. Maybe after that. I mean, just in terms of, I don't even know what I'm talking about. I mean, like, families that have been in acting forever.
Just prominent families or
Mhm.
celebrated families in America.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's of course very, very interesting. For me, it's a matter of moving myself to another location and doing that research there. So I hadn't really thought of it. That wouldn't be something that would be next for me, but it's certainly something that's interesting. And probably, if we did some digging, it's probably something out there.
I have a book I could recommend on that topic, though. I can't remember the author's name, but the book is called The Girls in the Picture, and it's
Oh,
about Mary Pickford and Frances Marion. Frances Marion was a screenwriter, and they worked together, I think, from the teens on into, um, the end of Mary Pickford's career
uh-huh.
anyway. And Frances Marion continued to write for Hollywood, but it's a fascinating and wonderful story.
Oh, good. I have it down. The
Yeah,
girls in the
yeah.
picture.
Look for it. It's. I wish I could remember the author's name. It's terrible.
Oh,
If
it'll
you're
be
if
easy.
you're willing to go forward a little bit or closer to this time in the 1930s and 40s, I think Renee Patrick has the Edith Head mysteries,
Yes.
and
Oh,
always associated with like big producers, big actors, and whatnot in the 30s and 40s, and they're delightful. They're really, really good.
okay.
They are, and I had forgotten about those. I read those a good number of years ago. They were very good.
I think there's a new one coming out pretty soon.
Oh, my goodness. Okay. I've got that down too.
For
All
the
right.
Edith Head mysteries?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
So I'm not getting any other questions, I guess. You've done such a good job of telling us about these books. And I just look forward to the next ones for you to be with us. And hopefully, I know that neither of you are terribly close, but I'm hoping we'll get more live events as we go forward in the new
Mhm.
year.
I hope so
I hope so too.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you typically travel much, Alyssa? Because you're farther away.
Right. Yeah. No, I usually arrange some signings within the state, and of course, when I go to Newport, I'll do some signings up there. But generally, I don't travel that much for that type of thing.
Okay, so we'll probably always be visiting with you on Zoom, but that would be
Well, we'll
nice.
see. Now that things are opening up and my daughter is out there in California, it's possible.
Oh, all right. Is she going
Yeah,
to school
yeah.
here?
No, actually, she teaches. She's a college professor.
Oh, how wonderful.
Yeah, yeah.
Great. And Diane, obviously you would be coming out this way.
You are not too far away from me. Yes, while I'm in Arizona.
Yeah. So when we get a little more, so we have to do this again and we can have one of you on camera and the other one in the store, and I'll try to get more techie than I really am. But this has been delightful. Again, let's remember it's Murder at Wakehurst by Alyssa Maxwell, and A Fiancée's Guide to First Wives and Murder by Dianne Freeman. And the books are in the store. They're ready and available. And I thank both of you so much for a wonderful interview this afternoon.
Thank you,
Thank you
Anne.
so much, Anne, for having us.
Yeah.
So it's been fun and very illuminating because you dive into backgrounds that I haven't known that much about. So it's fascinating to see. And you come so close to tying into each other's.
Mhm.
Yeah,
We're a good crossover.
Yes, you really are.
definitely.
Make good partners. Thank you so much for your time.
Well,
thanks,
thank you.
everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye now. Everyone
Bye.
take care.
Oh, definitely. You as well.